Oops. Hello, everybody. Hello again. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Salaam alaikum. Welcome to Skills of the Future Bootcamp, brought to you by Skills for Skills with more to present you to the top skills you need for the future of workplace. You're here again for the 5th day. Congratulations, you're taking the right next step for the future. If you are just joining us, marhaba and congratulations, and tell us how are you feeling in the chat box. Let's see how is the energy today. Tell us how is your energy. Are you feeling great, excited? Because it's contagious and we love it. We love to receive that passion in the beginning of each workshop. Oh, I see excited. I see the fire. Thank you so much. Remember that we will stay after the workshop to share our learnings with each other. So stay tuned to that. And then right before, we will present you the 2 initiatives behind this bootcamp. Moore is asking, how do you feel? How do you make fire? So thank you so much for being ready for this session. Now let's start the session with Victoria, who is an accountant passionate about child education in rural communities. She is from Nigeria. She is the founder of NILD Africa, an initiative for training young children and young adults in leadership, emotional intelligence, and academic excellence. For 2 years, she has reached 700 adolescents and young adults replicating leadership roles in their communities. Her vision is to create positive change through mentorship programs. She is a global shaper from Nigeria for Harcourt Hub. And her interface with public schools in her community led her to initiating digital literacy trainings for teachers and introduction to STEAM for kids from low-income backgrounds, seeing that it is relevant, that relevant knowledge is essential to prepare the next generation to become leaders.
Hi, hi again. Hanan, are you still with us? I guess Hanan just had a small connection problem. So maybe, hi everyone. Hi, Victoria. It's Asma from Mortin. So maybe we shall give you. Hi, Hanan. Are
Yes,
you?
I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Actually, I think that you had a small connection problem. So we shall continue, Victoria.
No.
I mean, presenting Victoria, and then you may please give her the floor. Thank you.
Okay, if I miss anything, Victoria, can you please replicate it after me? And then we will learn from her today how to use logic and reasoning to identify strengths and weaknesses of approaches to problems, then assessing the effectiveness of the solutions. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is day 5 of our 10 days to learn, adapt, and apply. The floor is yours, and for the participants, please use the Q&A section for your questions, and we'll get back to you. The floor is yours, Victoria.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Maybe Victoria,
okay.
Just to maximize, because I think the connection is not that good. So maybe if you, once you start sharing the presentation, can you please shut down the camera, because it consumes a lot of internet.
Okay, that works for me. Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be here. I'm excited to be here. I am very passionate about not just children. I'm very passionate about young people, seeing that they make better decisions, because to an extent, I personally have been mentored by certain people that led me to where I am today. So it's a privilege, and I'm happy to be here. So if we're ready, I am ready. Can we start up? Hello?
Yes, we totally hear you. You can start maybe sharing your screen if you will be starting with the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, my camera is off. I guess you can't see my face anymore. Hanani, are you there?
That's too bad. In person, yeah, we cannot see you anymore, but we're seeing the beautiful presentation. So
okay, so that's better.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you once again, everyone. But before I start, I'm going to be taking on critical thinking today. But before I start, I want to quickly take us back to an activity that we all do every day, unconsciously or consciously. Every day when we wake up, before leaving the house, going for our different endeavors, we, one way or the other, make decisions. Some decisions are small and some are big, but we're always constantly making decisions. Sometimes it could just be something as simple as going to the grocery to get something, for every other person in the house, or it could be a decision to take a degree or take a course online, or why you should do a master's course, a decision to be part of a group, a decision to be part of a team, whatever it is, but you're consciously or unconsciously making decisions. But the truth is, the decisions that you make, we either give you consequences that could be negative or positive. And then beyond making decisions, it's important that you make quality decisions. Lots of us, I can't categorically say, but from most schools here, like I know, I wouldn't say we're not intentionally taught critical thinking per se as a course, like a course outline. But for me personally, I'm a very curious person. So I would say I've been doing critical thinking, sometimes not consciously. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's time to actually learn the techniques of making better decisions, because at the end of the day, the quality of decision that you make is what matters, and not that you actually made decisions. So that's why we're doing critical thinking today. I'll quickly tell you a story about, I don't know if some of you here have heard about it. There was this scandal about Volkswagen in the US. They had their vehicles in the US, and they were selling out to different people that were interested in the vehicle. But there was this cheat device that they put in their Volkswagen vehicles, so that, because from what I know, from what I read, America, they don't allow for carbon dioxide emission into the environment. Of course, it's not good for, breathing in. But there was this, so when they were asked, when they were investigated, they said their vehicle, wasn't going to expel carbon dioxide, and it was okay. So when an investigation was carried out, they discovered that there was a device in the vehicle called a cheat device. What this device does is, when the car is moving, it moves, it gives you a very good performance. If you have to investigate, you wouldn't notice that device. What it makes is to take in, the carbon dioxide. People wouldn't have to notice. So when they eventually noticed it, it became an issue, it became a big scandal. And then it cost them, billions of, dollars. They had to retrieve Volkswagen from different parts of different countries in Europe. And then it also affected their market share. It affected their employees. The manager of the organization at that time, sometime in 2015, had to resign. And then for the first time, they had to record a loss, in their books of about 2 point something billion euros. I don't have the exact figure right now. But the point is, there was a new director, a new manager that took over. And then at this point in time, what they were now fighting for, what they were not looking out for, is to now get back their name. They had a strategy 2018, and the objective of that strategy was to put them in the map, whereby they'll be considered as one of the best, vehicle makers in the world. But this particular decision, truncated everything that they wanted to do. They had to re-strategize again for another strategy, 2023, unfortunately. But what I'm trying to say is, a decision was made by somebody. Somebody was responsible for a decision, but the quality of decision that was made affected the employees, affected the market share, affected the perception of the public about the organization. And then they are doing a lot of, they have to try doing a lot of rebranding, trying to sell to their customers to get back their customers' loyalty. So this is why it's important. I personally think that critical thinking, everybody should do critical thinking. Everybody should understand critical thinking. I may not have the exact picture of whatever, of everything that went wrong in the organization. This is what I read, that I know about. But then I believe that there was a wrong decision that was made. A lot of things were not considered. So I'll just quickly start with defining what critical thinking is before I move forward. Are you there? Hello?
Yes, we still can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just quickly start with defining critical thinking. Did you hear everything I was saying? Hello?
Can you?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Victoria. Can you check the chat box? People are interacting with you.
Can you manage to see the chat box, Victoria?
Okay, yes, I have. They're saying they can hear me. I have. Okay, this is fine. Okay, this is fine. So let's move ahead. Okay, so what is critical thinking? According to National Council for Excellence in Critical Thinking, the definition goes this way: critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively, skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication as a guide to belief and action. In its exemplary form, it is based on universal intellectual values that transcend subject matter divisions: clarity, accuracy, precision, consistency, relevance, sound evidence, good reason, depth, breadth, and fairness. Okay, having given that decision, I want to now take my time to break down from my own understanding of what critical thinking is. Critical thinking is your ability to clearly think rationally. It's your ability to understand logical connections between ideas. It's your ability to be reflective, to think about what you're thinking independently. Is your ability to question stereotypes, to question bias, to question opinion, to question perceptions, to be sure that what you're thinking, you have all the facts figured out. Critical thinking is simply evidence, empirical evidence, with common sense and making a statement that is valid. Critical thinking can also be said as when you're actively involved, you're an active learner, you're just not passive on the receiving side. You're thinking, you're analyzing the information that you have. And now there are two ways in which you can find yourself using critical thinking. There are two scenarios. One of them, it could be that you're trying to evaluate an information or a claim that has been presented to you. Secondly, it could be that you're trying to solve a particular problem. But whichever way, these are both ways that critical thinking can come to you. It could be an opinion, it could be a report that was sent to you, it could be something that you read, you're trying to verify if that information is accurate and correct. It could be that you're trying to solve a particular problem where you're living or in school, like a project where you're staying, or in your community, assuming you want to run a project. These are the areas that you can use critical thinking. Before we move forward, there are certain things. There are certain things I would like you to know, for you to understand why we should all be critical thinkers. There was this report, I read that says that about 85% of teachers, I have it in my reference, 85% of teachers from a global survey, stated that most of the students that they have that come into college from high school do not have critical thinking skills. What it means is that all through their years, from adolescence, from their secondary school classes, when they were being taught, there was no intentional, learning of what critical thinking is. So if this is true, what I'm saying is, if we have about 85%, students globally with this record, then does it mean that we're not intentionally raising people, even if they may have other skills? We're not intentionally raising people that can really do proper thinking with verifiable results. Because I believe that we're in a complex world, there are a lot of problems. I don't know if some of the students here, you've heard about the Sustainable Development Goals. There are the 17 goals, all over the world, agreed by the United Nations. There are global problems that everybody is trying to solve. So I am beginning to ask myself, is it that these problems were a result of solutions, that they were born out from decisions that were made in the past? Because if we're not intentional with critical thinking, the truth is you may end up creating a solution that may cause another problem. Now, moving forward, why should we all be critical thinkers? We should all be critical thinkers because, one, it is universal. It's something that you can use anywhere, whether you're in Nigeria, you're in Europe, you're in any part of the world. It's something that can be applied anywhere. You're not limited to using it in a particular place. It's a skill that is needed anywhere you find yourself in your everyday life. Even as you're at home studying, you can critically plan, for a particular course. From the beginning of a semester to the end of the semester. if you're in a work environment, if you're volunteering, you're an intern, you're working in an organization, you're holding a leadership position, you're a government person, you're holding a leadership position in a government institution. You need critical thinking, especially if you're always involved in decision-making process that will impact on people. So it's a universal principle. Critical thinking is universal. And it's also crucial to the economy, where in today's world, technology has changed a lot of things. I am here in Nigeria. I can speak to Hanani in Morocco. I can speak to my friends in UK. I can speak to my friend in US. Even in doing this, there's going to be exchange of information. There's going to be exchange of data. I need critical thinking to be, to be sure that what I am reading, I can make sense out of it. I'll give a typical example. Yesterday, a colleague of mine sent me a report, on WhatsApp of a newspaper. And, it's something that has to do with the organization I work with. And he said, send this information, send it to your colleague. It's something that, that is related to you guys, to the job you guys are doing. And I looked at it and I said, why? He said I should send it. I had to, diplomatically, teach him, tell him that you just don't send information like that. You have to confirm that the information is correct. Even with my team, I have to be sure that they've seen the same information before I can send it out. And guess what? I had to check online to verify that information, and it was wrong. It was wrong. So imagine if I had sent that information. It means I would have misled my supervisor. I would have misled the team. And it could actually cost, maybe somebody in my team, it could actually cost the person something, because the information could have its own consequences that I am not even sure of. I may not be able to pinpoint. Another thing critical thinking does is improve our comprehension. I don't know if you've ever heard about this before. If you're doing exercise, for example, you've not had to do exercise for some time and you're doing it again after a long time. After the first day, you start feeling pain all over your body. It's the same thing when you feel pain all over your body and you do the same exercise again, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you see that you feel stronger and you won't feel that pain anymore. Now, imagine the same scenario with when you're doing critical thinking, you're reading, you're doing research, you're trying to validate information. The way exercise is to the body, the way exercise makes your body strong, that's how critical thinking will keep stretching your brain capacity. Because you're taking on new challenges, you're taking on new problems, so it's easier for you, so it's easier for you to take on other bigger tasks and challenges as they come. Yeah, another thing to also look at in critical thinking is it promotes your creativity. Critical thinking promotes your creativity. Just planning to be on this section, to facilitate on this session, it's I have to find creative ways to work on my slide in a way that I can communicate with you. Another typical example that you are aware is skills for skills. I believe that skills for skills was born out of critical thinking, because if you look at the curriculum that you guys have been on and about for the past 5 days, they didn't just pick it from anywhere. It was a team. Somebody sat down, somebody verified, somebody asked. There was a forecast that was done in 5, 10, 6 years from now. What will these skills do for these young people? How do we engage them? How do we equip them to be ready for the work that is even not available? So it brings the creativity in you. It makes you see the impossible. It engages in critical thinking also helps you to engage in reflective and independent thinking. It helps you question your own assumptions. It helps you question, it helps you to be more objective. It helps you to be more self-aware and emotional aware, to be emotional aware. I don't know if you have some of us here that have done emotional intelligence. When you're self-aware, it means you're yourself, your own self-critic. You can look at yourself, you can criticize yourself and say, these are the things I am good in, these are the things I am bad in, these are the things I need to work on. Critical thinking helps you do this mental exercise. It also helps you to question assumptions or stereotypes. It also makes you to be an active learner, not just a passive recipient of knowledge. as I'm teaching you, as I'm facilitating on this course, it means that being a critical thinker means that even as I am actively, teaching and learning, I'm able to connect ideas. I'm able to find better examples to explain myself. I'm able to find, better examples. And even you that is listening to me, you're also communicating and interacting with me. I've seen from the chat here, I've seen some people saying like COVID-19 had a lot of misinformation. That's being an active learner, even while a critical thinking course is going on. Okay, let's move forward. Now, I'm going to take us through basic concepts that should aid your comprehension of critical thinking. Because I want to believe some of us are taking on this course for the first time, and it's important that you understand these concepts, so you can, get a full grasp when we get into the different processes of critical thinking. Now, the first one is logic. I want to believe some of us here already know what logic is about. Just quickly, give a line, just quick, a short explanation. Now, logic is reasoning conducted or assessed according to strict principle. Now, the principles that I'm referring to here is what you're going to learn in the critical thinking processes. But the most important thing is that you're following a particular line of thought and process. There's a process, there's a standard process that you need for critical thinking. And when you do that, whatever solution, whatever feedback you get, you can verifiably say that, okay, through logic, we're able to make this conclusion out of it. Another concept in critical thinking is premise or reason. This is an opinion or fact with evidence for a particular claim. For example, I can say, okay, Victoria was unable to join Skills for Skills today. And what's the reason? The reason is because I do not have a laptop or I do not have internet to be able to partake. I do not have internet to partake in a class. So I've made a claim. My claim is I cannot join Skills for Skills, and I do not have a computer to join Skills for Skills. So my reason here is the reason or premise. I made a claim and I have an evidence to say I do not have a laptop. So this is the meaning of what premise is, because you meet a lot of premise or reasons in critical thinking. Then another thing is claim. This is asserting that something is true with or without evidence. Now, this is a claim, like somebody rightly mentioned COVID-19. There were lots of resources, materials all over. Even here in Nigeria, there were stories of different things that you could take. In fact, if you take it, it's more like you protecting yourself from COVID, and people started taking a lot of things, unfortunately. But at some point over time, the information we're getting was more clarified because people were afraid, people were agitated, about COVID-19. So a claim is something that is true or may not be true with or without an evidence. So if it has an evidence, it could be true. Even when it has an evidence, a lot of times, the question is the evidence that it has, is it correct? Because that's what makes it true. So if I make a claim, there has to be a process to verify that the claim I have made is correct. Now, what's argument? This is simply a set of reasons that support a claim. So you're making a claim and you have different reasons, that you've brought out. So you're telling your opponent, these are the different reasons. This is why I want to study this course in this particular university. I learned their tuition fee is fair. I learned that I can get an additional scholarship to do my PhD. I learned that if I study in this university, I'll be able to get job references. Organizations are interested in this university because we were told that the learning standard is top-notch. These are all sets of reasons that I have to a claim. Are we here? Hello?
Yes, totally, we hear you.
Hello?
Here with you, and you have interaction. You have a lot of.
I hope I'm not lost. I hope I'm not lost you.
Yeah, I totally know that feeling of.
I noticed. Yeah, I hope I'm not lost you.
Feeling speaking alone, but we're totally with you. We're about 100 participants, and
yes,
interaction in the chat box. So yeah, we're totally with you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another trait that a critical thinker should have. Okay, moving on. So we're going to be doing traits of a critical thinker. Now, I talked about, why we should all be a critical thinker. So I am going to be explaining traits of a critical thinker. Please, the participants, I need you to listen attentively so you can take this. Okay. So now, if you are a critical thinker, if you notice there's a picture on my slide, there's a man standing over there pointing his hands in a pie chart. Now, if you want to become a critical thinker, because I want to believe that not everybody has this skill. In fact, a lot of people do not have this skill. You need to open your mind, because our perception, where we're born, the environment we were raised, nature and nurture, who raised us, the people that we've been around that have influenced us, the stereotypes that we built our life on influences the way we think and the way we accept things. So if you are not a critical thinker before now, you need to listen to this part so that you can critically look at yourself and see the things that you may need to drop so you can better analyze and make better decisions. Now, traits of a critical thinker. The first one is observation. For example, you're walking down a street and then you notice a signpost, a very big signpost that has a white background. Maybe on the signpost is written, don't turn to your left or don't turn to your right. If you don't take your time to actually observe, this is an example. If you don't take your time to actually observe, you can either turn into the left or turn into the right, or assume that you're asked to not just turn into the left. Now, in real life situations, if you're presented with a claim or a problem, you have to take your time to observe. Observing does not mean that you just read out the materials or whatever has been presented to you. You have to observe your environment. You have to observe the people that are talking to you. You have to observe the people that presented information to you. You have to observe, who are they? How are they? Who were they before now? Are they technical people? Are they technocrats? Are they people that from before now, they like results? They like to follow things, they like due process. So a critical thinker, these are traits that you should have. You shouldn't just take things, from face value. Ask questions, find out. Now, another second trait of a critical thinker is curiosity. How curious are you for knowledge? Are you this kind of person that give up easily? Something is presented to you. I personally am a very, very curious person. I'm always finding things. I'm always looking out for things. And I think it's an attribute that every young person should take, because this has even helped me in my work environment. I'm always asking questions. I'll give you a typical example. The job I'm doing, that when I went for the interview for this particular job, when we got there were lots of people, and I had people making comments as they were going in for interviews, different comments on oh, there's this difficult interviewer. He's asking a lot of crazy questions. I don't know what he's asking, blah blah blah, and all that. But when I actually went into the same interview, when I met the same interview panel, for me, it didn't feel like there was any big deal. There was a difference. I'm going to tell you the difference. Before I went for that interview, I had to do a thorough research of what that organization had been working on for the past 10 years. I had to do a thorough research. I wanted to know what's their objective. What are they looking for? So if this is what they've been working for these past 10 years, what kind of candidates are they looking for? Who will fit this role? I had to ask myself that question. And then I had to tell myself, Victoria, do you think you actually fit this role if you're called upon? Now, if you have a nonchalant attitude and you're not a curious person, if you find yourself in my shoes, there's a possibility that you will go for the same thing. You won't ask questions. For example, you studied accounting, or example, you studied engineering or mechanical engineering, and you just tell yourself, oh, I studied mechanical engineering, and whatever they should ask you will revolve around it. The world is getting tough and more complex. So you really need to be smart, a step ahead, and be very, very curious, positively. Now, the next trait is being objectivity, being able to say the truth the way it is, not having perception, not having a bias. Maybe you're part of a team and you're working with some set of people. Maybe you have a team member that is a choleric, that have very strong personality traits, that makes you very uncomfortable. And then there's a need for somebody to be appointed in a team to solve a particular problem. But because you feel uncomfortable around this person, you think the person should not be called upon. That's not you being objective, because that particular decision, if you're responsible for appointing that particular person, that particular decision you're making, because you feel the person will make you uncomfortable, will jeopardize the objective of everybody in that group. So you should be objective as a young person. Now, another thing is introspection. You should be able to, think about things on your own, when your own, evaluate things, see them from your own perspective, and don't just assume that people must accept things the way you see it, or people must accept you the way you are. Be open-minded. Then another one, moving forward, is analytical thinking. Sorry, this is being able to break down problems into small, complex problems into small units. Being able to analyze them, look at them, see relationships between these problems. Don't just take things, don't just take information or assume, or maybe Edward has gone over the document, he has done whatever he needs to do, I don't need to go over it. No, being analytical means that even if somebody has done it, when it's on your table, it means you have to go over it, look at the information, and see that the right thing has been done. Because at the end of the day, whatever happens to the team affects everybody. And it will be very irresponsible for you to say, oh, it's not my business, I am not part of the team, Edward was responsible for it. So being part of the team means you take responsibility and ownership, even for everybody. Another trait to look at in critical thinking is identifying biases. I think, in the course of my explanation, I've also done a bit of this, but I'll still explain. Being able to identify bias, I mentioned something that is related to it in objectivity. Being able to observe, being able to analyze when people are being biased about an information, when people are not giving the complete evidence, when people are not saying things the way it ought to be. So you should be able to see through this. And how you can do it is when you follow the critical thinking process. But then you have to have that mind that this is what you need to do, and not just accept things the way they are given to you. Another factor to look at is ability to determine relevance. Whatever it is you're analyzing, whatever problem you're solving, how relevant is it at that time? Because there's no point solving a problem. Yes, you've solved it. Oh, it's okay. Victoria did it perfectly. But if it's not relevant at that time for decision making, then it doesn't make sense. For a young person, whether you're working, you're in school, anywhere you are, you should ask yourself, this information or this problem or this claim that I need to verify, that I need to ensure that it's valid. When is it going to be used? How soon do I need to make it ready? Because there's no point making ready something that cannot be used. For example, a typical example is skills for skills. There has been preparations for skills for skills, follow up with me, emails and all, and email and all. And I kind of appreciated their timeline, how they worked, even when I had to send in my slides, to prepare for this particular training. The point is, imagine that I sent in my slide for the very first time for the program, maybe just a day to the day I'll be facilitating. It shows that you probably didn't prepare, or alternatively, the information may not be relevant at that time. And I'm sure that no reasonable team will even want to wait for you to send in a slide or send in an information, just a day to the time that is needed. Now, another thing to also look at is inferencing using raw data. Now, inferencing simply means being able to reason out a conclusion or a true fact when you're giving a data. I'm going to give you a typical example of when I had to work on something similar like this, but not now. I'm going to mention it later. So when you're giving data, you're able to look at it, compare data, and be able to make out sense out of it. For example, you want to reach out to an organization that you want to train some young people on digital skills, on digital training. So you go online, possibly you were given some names, or you decide to go to Google to find out organizations that are already offering digital training skills. So you sample about 5 organizations that you've been told, and you're supposed to go through their history, see what they've done in the past. What's their story? What have they done? Who are their participants? Who are the stakeholders? What do they know? Who have they partnered with? You have to compare this thing from the dates, from the years. What was their result? Did they have an M&E report? Did they have a feedback? What was their input into that program? At the end of the day, what was the impact? How can you measure it? These are the things that when you add them up together, it makes sense if you want to make a conclusion. So you're not just told on face value, oh, this is the best organization for digital training skills for young people, and you're just running ahead. You're just going to meet them. You don't do that as a critical thinker. I hope you're still with me.
Totally, yes, Victoria.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, another trait of a critical thinker is humility. Being able to accept that you don't know something, not being proud, that knowledge to always want to learn, that's being eager to learn, not feeling that you're bigger than someone or you ought to know something better. Personally, I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm always open to learning. I can learn from anybody, whether older than me, bigger than me. So you have to also have that mentality as a critical thinker, because just that little thing, there's just one small thing that you may miss out of being proud to make your decisions. And it will cost everyone in the organization so much. So you also have to be humble. Then there's a place of compassion and empathy. As a critical thinker, you seriously need compassion and empathy. You need that human part. That human part will lead you into making probable, solutions that when you do them, they do not have adverse effect on people, because you can feel people's pain. You can put people in your shoes. Yeah, it's good to be logical, but at the same time, whatever problem we're solving is for humanity. And if humanity is not there, who is going to benefit from it? So there's a place for being logical. There's a place for being very objective. There's a place for having your facts and your evidence. There's also a place for having empathy and compassion as a critical thinker. Another major trait is your willingness to challenge status quo. So your willingness to challenge status quo is that you're open to asking questions. You ask open-ended questions. You're not afraid. You ask every question that you need to ask. You don't feel that you've asked so much. If you need to read it up, if you need to visit an institution to confirm, if you need to visit a news agency to confirm, but you're constantly asking questions. If you need to look out for people that have done the same thing that you're trying to solve, you ask them questions. Asking questions. There's nobody that suffered from asking questions. People actually become better from asking questions. You get to learn more. Another major trait of a critical thinker is being open-minded. You have an open mind. Remember when I started, I talked about our background, where we're raised, who nurtured us, what we experienced growing up. For example, if you're around maybe guidance or adults that shut you out, you were not free to express yourself. There's this tendency that you may grow up bottling things up. You may not be able to express yourself easily or speak out. So if you're that kind of person, I don't know, you may need to work, on that path, because you're not the issue. Maybe the people you were around, people that you have to, people that during your adolescent years, because that's where we form some of our habits. Now that you're an adult, you need to work on this, because I believe most of us that are here were in college, or some of us are out of college. Because when you're in the workplace or where you're among team members, working with people, you're not, and you're starting with responsibility to carry out a task. An excuse of not having an open mind to verify a particular information will not make sense to anybody. Another factor is awareness of common errors. See that there's a possibility that people can make errors. There are some people that in our hearts who feel that, they are so intelligent, they are so brilliant, whatever they say is correct, is 100%. It's not always the case. Everybody can make mistakes. People can make errors at any time. So you have to keep checking over and over. If you need to check over and over to be sure, it's an important trait of a critical thinker. Not because you want to offend anybody. And really, when you hear critical thinking is not that you're being judgmental. You're not being overcritical. You're not a difficult person. Critical thinking simply means, having an independent mind, making independent decisions, reflective thinking, intentional thinking, because it takes a process to arrive to a point that if any other person has to go through the same process all over just like you did, they will get the same results and answer. Now, effective communication is another major trait of critical thinking. Effective communication is that you communicate better. Even as you communicate, you watch your body language. A lot of times when we communicate, our body language communicates like 97% of what we're saying. So you have to be sure that you're not saying a different thing and communicating a different thing with your body language. The both of them have to work together. So you're communicating with people, or you're working alone, or whatever it is you're doing, your communication has to be in sync. What you're saying with your lips should be the same thing that your body language is saying. And then you should also see that you communicate for people to understand. Even when you're doing your critical thinking, you're going through the processes, when you write in a language, you have to also check who is your audience. Your audience should determine what you communicate. You shouldn't have an audience of maybe young people, and then you end up using very difficult vocabulary. You're trying to explain something to them, a problem that they cannot understand. You have to look at your audience. Who is your audience? Who are you representing your claim or your argument or your conclusion that you've made, or the solution that you've arrived at? Who are you communicating it to? So it's important to also have an effective communication skill. Another major factor is active listening. Active listening, when you hear some people having a conversation, say, oh, I'm listening. You can be listening, but you're not listening. Active listening means you're looking at the person, you're even listening to what the person is not saying. You're taking points, you're analyzing what the person is saying, you're allowing the person to talk. You're not disrupting the person, you're not stopping the person from, finishing what the person is communicating. You're listening to really understand. This is another important trait of a critical thinker. I hope you're still with me.
Indeed, we are.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe you can just check the chat box, Victoria, and see how much interaction you've got. Definitely. And let me what you are saying, sorry, is very relevant, and I'm sure it's relevant to all of us, including the participants. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward, the next thing we're going to be doing now is the core critical thinking process itself. Whenever you're faced, remember I said from the beginning that in critical thinking, the major objective is to find a solution to a problem, or to evaluate an argument, or whatever it is that somebody has said, to be sure that the point is valid enough. These are the two things you find yourself doing in critical thinking. So the first step into critical thinking is what we call identifying. Now, I listed some points here, but I'll take my time to explain them. Now, for example, you're trying to work on a tax. Let's say you're trying to do a campaign on poverty globally, all over the world. And you've heard claims of different people mentioning, oh, this particular country is suffering from this, or this particular country, they cannot afford this. This is one of the examples. Or you're working on a research. Let me use something that you can relate with easily, because I believe some of you are in your college level and we all did research. I did it myself. You're trying to work on a research. For example, a research on social responsibility. Now, social responsibility is corporate organizations that work in host communities. What they do, a percentage of funding they support the community with, because they are working in that particular community. It's more like they are maintaining, taking care of the community where they are working, where they're benefiting from. Sometimes it may not be through monetary funds. Sometimes it could be through volunteering, even for community causes. So let's say you're solving a problem on social responsibility. Let's say somebody makes a claim, and the person says about 10 organizations, I've noticed we have 10 organizations in our host community, and about 5 of them, or about 6 of them, they do not do social responsibilities. They claim they do social responsibilities, but they do not. Now, this is just an example I'm giving. In as much as you're listening to my example, please also focus on the process in which I am going to take. Because for this particular process, you can use it for anything that you want to solve, any claim that you want to evaluate. Now, the first one is the first thing you begin to ask yourself is, now, for that social responsibility, who provided that information? This is in the identifying stage. In the identifying stage of critical thinking, what you clearly do here is to actually define whatever it is you want to work on. Is it a problem? Is it an idea? Is it a claim that has been made by someone? Is it an argument that somebody has put out? Now you have to clearly define it, because it's in defining it that you'll be able to move on to the other processes. If you don't define it, if you don't get the right information, just like when you're doing your research, when you're doing your background study, you're trying to find out what different people have said about it, who said it, what's the person's, does the person have integrity? Is this something you can fall back on? Who produced the information that you're using? For what purpose is that information? Is this something you can take? Now, beyond asking these questions, you cannot even also go online, because research, has to do with, we're in the internet age. Of course, you can get any information you want on Google. You have to go onto Google to ask, who was the first person that said this? What was the reason? Why did they define that particular problem? Because in doing this, it will give you insight into knowing you actually defined the whatever challenge that you're trying to solve, or whatever problem that you're trying to understand. Now, secondly, you also have to ask this information. Remember when I talked about why we should all be critical thinkers and traits of critical thinking, I mentioned relevance. This information that you're trying to solve, how relevant is it? What do you need it for? Now, we can use a typical, let's use COVID-19, which is very recent. There were different stories of COVID-19. There were stories of, chloroquine, taking chloroquine can cure COVID-19. People said, I don't want to, there are some native herbs here in my home country, but I'm sure if I mention them, you may not even know them. But they were just different information, with what people can take to solve COVID-19. We heard different stories of, there's a vaccine on the way. This is coming from here. This is coming from here. We heard different things. But as a critical thinker, you have to sit down and ask yourself, how did they get this information? Who sent this information? What is WHO saying? What health organization? What are other health institutions saying? Do you have any health friend, a close friend that is a practitioner? Is there a question that you can ask the person? Even if the person does not clearly, give you, give you information like black and white, the way it ought to be. But by the time you ask all of these questions, it makes it easier for you to define what it is that you're trying to solve, or that you're trying to verify, or that you're trying to know. Now, moving forward, the next stage for the next phase or process of critical thinking is analyzing. Now, after defining the problem or whatever claim that you're trying to challenge, trying to verify, the next thing you now do is to analyze. Now, you analyze everything every relevant information that you've gotten from the first process, which is defining. You break it down. You have to be more in depth. Now, analyzing here means is, you start asking yourself, why was this evidence presented in the first place? Why did anybody wake up to say that chloroquine drug will cure COVID-19? Like there was a video recently that went viral of a woman from US I didn't do that research, so I can't verify the information, but that's a typical example. Why would that evidence be presented? Why is there a particular assumption? Why are some people saying that, there are stories of people even calling COVID-19 malaria here, which I do not agree, because of course I've heard of people that it has killed. So I can't accept, what I can't verify. Now, another thing you should also ask is the evidence, provided, does it support the conclusion that was reached? Now, the conclusion that somebody came up and said chloroquine, can cure, the evidence that you've seen so far. This is you not taking your time to do a more thorough, you're analyzing everything you've defined from the identifying process stage, which is number one. Now you're asking, is there any other thing I need to find? You're taking your time to be sure that you're not just taking people's opinion that are based on biases, or that are based that are not verified, that are based on their own perception, that are based on their own values and belief on who they are. It's about you analyzing to be sure, not just even taking an information because somebody you consider to be exceptionally brilliant is the person that provided that information. How about looking for 2, 3 other 5 other 10 people that you can qualify them to be that intelligent as the same person? How about getting their own facts to find out if whatever information that has been presented is correct? Now, a typical project research writing as well, if you're in college and you've done your research, the first thing you do is you do more like a background study. You're trying to find out facts about that particular information. You're trying to find out what other people have done, what other people have said about it, what have been said, what did they define, what did they call it, did they do anything different, did they discover anything different, was there anything that they added that you don't know? These are the things that you add together and now move on to the next stage, which is reflecting. Now, reflecting is basically is a metacognitive process, which means it involves thinking about our thinking. It's a form of analysis with a focus on you, your thinking, behavior, and actions. I mentioned before that we being able to reflect, think about who we are. There are different things that affect, our lives growing up. Now, one of them is the schools that we attended, the friends that we had, the people that parented us, even if they are not our biological parents, the things that we were made to see growing up, they affect the way we also see ourselves. So you're whether you like it or not, you're a product of your environment. So you being able to critically, analyze yourself independently should, give you insight into if there are some things that you need to review about yourself, or there are some things that you've been fed with growing up that you do not need to accept because somebody said them. Now, this is the same thing you do in reflecting for critical thinking. Now you're reviewing, you're thinking about the outcome, possible solutions, you're thinking about, you're avoiding bias. You're also thinking about this thing, if I take this whole thing I've analyzed, from defining the problem, from analyzing, the problem, from getting other opinions from different people, if I combine the two of them together, are there probable solutions that I'm saying? Are they beginning to make sense? Can I connect the dots together? Are they making sense? What I've seen so far, do they make sense to me? Okay, I'll also give you a typical example. My organization, I had to do a procurement evaluation for about 4 big organizations. 2 of them were international organizations, the other 2 were local organizations, but they were all big in their own sense. Now, this was what happened. I was presented with information about these 4 organizations by my team, and I am supposed to evaluate them and make a decision out of them and make recommendations. So I had to right there do critical thinking. I did this for I had to go through this process for more than a week because critical thinking takes time. Now I'm going to run you through what I had to do. For the 4 organizations, I had, first of all, I defined what objective did my firm, what were they looking for? What did they want to achieve? With those procurement, they were trying to procure, car hire services, but from good organizations that are reputable, that have a standard, of service. Now I had to define that, okay, this is the objective of my organization. They have to be responsible, they have to be reliable, they have to be an organization that have been there for even more than a decade, if possible. And this organization, I think the list of them have been there for about 7-8 years. I think the rest, there was one that was up to 20 something years, 30 years. Now, this information was not given to me when these organizations were presented to me. I had to take my time. I went through their details. I went to their different websites. I had to look out for, after I've defined whatever it is my organization wanted, which is best services with a reputable organization. That was my definition, my interpretation, which is still the same thing with the number one process, identifying. Now, the second stage was analyzing. I had to go through website to find out the businesses they've done all this while. I had to ask them for references from organizations they've interacted with. I had to ask for their legal papers. I asked for, their policy making papers in respect to their drivers, in respect to the people that work with them. I had to ask questions about security. I had to, find out the organization. I went further to even find out the people they've worked with. I had to find out, the kind of services that they offer. This information were more like a to-do list for me. I had about 10 of them. I had to go through each and every one of them. I had to find out their lease plan. What kind of lease plan do they have? Can we trust their vehicles? The vehicles that they are using, is it theirs? I also had to find out that as well. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to make a decision. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to make a decision. And the quality of decision I make, or the conclusion I make when I'm done, is dependent on how much information that I get from this analysis. Now, moving forward from the reflecting stage, now back to evaluation stage. Remember, I said from the reflecting stage, I have to ask myself certain questions about my own bias. For example, if one of the organization is owned by a white man, am I a racist? Do I have an issue working with a white man or a black man? In reflecting, these are things, one of the things I would also do. As I've gone through this process from my defining to analyzing to the stage of reflecting, at this point in time, it's beginning to make sense. Like I said, I'm beginning to connect all the dots in this critical thinking process. Okay, I'm beginning to know, okay, these are the ones I can work with. They could provide this information, because if you've been in business for 10 years or 15 years, there are certain documents that I expect that you should have. You should be able to give to me. Now, like I said, nobody gave me this information, but I had to look for them. I had to look for them. I took my time to look for them. I had to find out their offices, different branches, all the places where they're located, even the ones that are in Dubai, that are in US, in different places. I had to find out, because it was important for me to, get a verifiable conclusion. Now, what will happen is, if I go through that process and I do not get this information right, and I end up recommending, because I'm on ground, and I end up recommending a firm that they can't work with, or that have stories of bad debts, or we could pay them money into their accounts and they can't provide the services we want, I have ended up, causing challenges, great consequences for my organization. That particular objective will not be met. And then the timeline, if we're working on a project, will be truncated. It means that the services, I didn't do what I was supposed to do from the initial stage. And it could also cost me a lot of things. And then if I am not objective, if I do not have an independent mind, if I'm trying to favor a particular tribe, it also means that I am jeopardizing the organization. I hope you're with me. Okay. Now moving forward. Okay, moving forward to the next phase, which is evaluating. I've explained identifying, analyzing, and reflecting. Now moving forward to evaluating. Now, evaluating is having gotten all the information I've been able to process from identifying to analyzing to reflecting. At the point of reflecting, remember I said I am beginning to connect all the dots. I am seeing possible solutions, who I am going to recommend, the information I'm going to accept. Now, at the point of evaluating, I am not going to ask myself, these possible solutions that I have taken, I have gotten, can I really trust them? You know, can I fully support them with evidence? What additional information do I need to add? What claims do I need to make to make further investigation? Should I just depend on reflecting alone, you know, on what I've done from identifying to analyzing to reflecting alone? Or should I move past the stage? Are there other questions that I need to ask?
Hi, Victoria. Are you able to see the chat box in parallel? Hello?
Hello?
Yes. We cannot.
Hello?
Yes, yes, Victoria, we do hear you, but we cannot see your screen.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, now it's okay.
Okay. Okay, there are some questions in the chat.
Yes, exactly. Actually, we have some questions also in the Q&R feature. Do you have access to the Q&R section?
No, I don't.
You know,
but is it
down in
possible
your
for me
screen,
to take them when I'm done?
Yeah, do you prefer, I can read them to you and we can answer one by one. But down in your screen, you have normally next to sharing screen, you have Q&R.
Okay, please go on.
Yeah, so can you
hear me?
So yes, do you have access to the Q&R section? Victoria?
Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. You said I should
Yeah, I was just saying there is the Q&R section. So we already have 13.
Okay, we have 13 questions there.
Yeah. So did you access to the Q&R section? Can you click on it and see the question?
Okay, I've seen them.
Okay, amazing.
Okay, is it possible for me to finish before taking the questions?
Totally. So right after you finish,
them?
totally. Right after you finish, we start the
Okay.
Q&R. You can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay, so they should just give me some time. I'm going to answer all their questions. Thank you very much. Okay, so my camera is on. Is this fine? Hello?
Yes, we still cannot see you. I mean, from my side, I can't see you.
Can you see me now?
Not yet. Now, I mean, you appeared for like half of a second. Now it's okay. What a gorgeous lady.
Okay. So we can go ahead, right?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, interesting questions here. Okay, let me just quickly run through. There's also a practical session, you know, where we would all do critical thinking together.
Amazing.
So I'm sure they will get from all the questions I'm seeing, I'm sure they'll be able to answer all the questions, you know, when we go through the process together. Okay. Okay, so I was explaining evaluating as a process of critical thinking. So evaluating skills help you make good judgments on the reliability of information and the soundness of the argument that you've gotten from just the previous stage, which is reflecting. We've gone through identifying, we've gone through analyzing, and we've also done reflecting. So everything you've done from defining, which is defining the problem in the identification stage, up to reflecting, you know, will give birth to what we're going to be doing in the first stage, which is evaluation. So at this point, you're evaluating if the information you've gotten so far, the argument, you know, you're making, whatever whatever research you're trying to do, whatever claim you're trying to validate. At this point, you're asking if what you've gotten so far is enough. Do you need to make more investigations? Are there other questions you need to ask? Are there other information that you need to gather, you know, before you can be sure that, you know, the possible or probable solutions that you've been able to make out from all the inquiries you've made, you know, can be followed through. So basically, evaluation is being sure of the things you've done in the reflection stage, from the identification, defining problem stage, the analysis, to the reflection stage. Evaluation is being sure that, let me tell you an interesting thing. With critical thinking, you may have to be going over a process from beginning to end, from defining identification to the end. Oh, okay. Or when I was, you know, reflecting on what I've done so far, there's an information I missed. So it means I have to go back to the defining stage, which is the first one, to ask, did I get did I define the problem correctly? The claim that was made, did I actually get what, you know, the person was trying to explain to me? You know, before I went ahead to verify this information. Remember, I was using a typical example of my workplace. So if I am at the evaluation stage trying to evaluate information, I notice that, oh, there's this particular list document of vehicles that was not provided for me. You know, so what happened here? Is it that it's not required? Is it that I need to get this information? It's just you being sure of the information that you have, 100%. And then we'll move over to the next stage, move on to the next stage, which is the reasoning stage. Now, at this point, with all the information you've gotten so far, this is the point you make a decision or you make a reasonable conclusion. At this point, this is simply, reasoning is the ability to think logically, to formulate fair judgment and justify a position. Now, going back to the example that I used initially, if I decide that, okay, I am supposed to recommend a particular organization for the procurement process, from everything I've done from the initial stage up to this point, I should be able to say, this organization, this first one, the second that we can work with, I can verify the information that, you know, they provided. If it has to do with COVID-19, which I started with initially, from all the information that I've gathered, from everything that I've gathered, if this is true, then this is true. If all the reasons that have been provided, all the reasons are the questions I asked. When I said reasons before now, you know, premise, evidence, they are all the things that are collected, all the information, facts are collected. If your facts are correct, if they are all cumulated when you're doing critical thinking, it means that you're going to have a solid and a valid solution or conclusion that you can rely on, because all the facts that you've collected, they are reasonable and they are fair. But whenever you're doing critical thinking or any arguments and all the facts you're able to get, they are not correct, it means that whatever information, even if you follow the critical thinking process logically, it means that the solution, whatever you're giving, is not correct and could have adverse consequences. Thank you very much. So moving on to barriers to critical thinking. Now, having understood the 5 processes of critical thinking, you can do your research. There are other areas that you can go to, but these are the basic ones that you should know. Even if you've had these 5 processes in your core, you understand them, there are certain things that you can do that can jeopardize your critical thinking processes. And one of them is an egocentric nature and thinking pattern. If you're very proud, you're not open to criticisms, you do not accept things when people tell you, you're not objective, you're more focused on your pride, you're more focused on the person talking down on you, then you can't do well with critical thinking. And remember from the beginning, if you want to survive in the 21st century, if you want to be that staff or that young person that will remain in an organization when everybody is going, when they are cutting down, staff, of course, that at this time around, in this COVID-19, lots of organizations were out of production. Some of them are declaring, losses, bankruptcy. They are cutting down staff strength. They are trying to cut down overhead. It's all over globally. Now, the fact is, if you want to remain that relevant young person, 2-3 years from now, 5 years, 10 years down the line, you have to be that person that the management sees as someone that will make decisions, that is very critical, that even when you're not around, even when they're not around, you have to be that person that they can trust, that can take ownership. And the only way you can display that trait even now, do you own up to responsibilities? So if you're an ego-driven person, you will find yourself, rejecting ideas. You find yourself, thinking so much about yourself instead of thinking about the solution that needs to be solved. Now, another thing is group thinking. Group thinking is another major challenge with critical thinking, because in group thinking, everybody is thinking together. We'll be limited. Now, even in that group thinking, some people may be afraid of expressing themselves because of certain people. So I will advise that there could be a team or group thinking, but people should individually do the proper thinking first and submit to an individual body where it can be analyzed before conclusions can be made, where they can come together and be made. Because a lot of times, if you're doing a group thinking, some people may not thoroughly express themselves. Some people may be relying on other people's, independent mind to think for them. They may think that they don't need to stress themselves. So that's another barrier to critical thinking. Another barrier to critical thinking is drone mentality. This happens a lot to people that do a routine, activity. They go to work, maybe an administrative job. You're doing a particular thing every day. You're doing a particular activity every day. Before you know it, you're no more curious. You don't bother yourself to find out new knowledge. You don't bother yourself to find out something that you've not seen before. You don't bother yourself to ask, is there any way I can do administrative job differently? Can I find out how it's been done in America or in Europe or in Africa or any other place? Is there anybody I can emulate? Or is administrative? I don't need to know any other thing. I don't even need emotional intelligence and all that. That's drone mentality. You're just fixed on that particular thing you're doing, and you want to be careful, you'll be left out. And for that kind of mentality, after a while, you will phase out of the organization, especially if you have other team members that are open to growing, that are open to trying new things or different things. Because critical thinking is an everyday activity. It happens to you while you're at home. This night before you're going to sleep, this evening you're going to do critical thinking in bits and in pieces. You don't take your time to do it. Now, why we're teaching you this is so that you can put it as a lifestyle, incorporate it, even in your schoolwork, make a habit out of it, because it's really going to help you on the long term. Another thing is social condition. Social conditioning is our stereotypes. I've seen some of the comments here. Some people have certain stereotypes. For example, there are some corporate organizations. If you've heard of gender equality, some people are paid less. Some people are paid higher. Some people are perceived to do certain job better. Some people are. So So these things can also affect critical thinking. That's why you need to keep, reflecting, doing independent thinking, ask yourself question assumptions, that this thing has been happening like this all these years. Does it mean that it's correct? Does it mean that it should happen? Does it mean that it should continue? Another major factor to consider is biased nature and experiences. If you have a biased nature, you've had a terrible experience, maybe with people, or getting a particular information at some time, it could affect how you see critical thinking as well. Another thing to also look at is work pressure. I personally, when it has to do with work, or more work, I have a mental attitude to work. Even when the work is big or it's actually not my core job, I just tell myself that, oh, Victoria, is an opportunity to learn. So for me, more work, more learning, more capacity. For me, more work, more learning, more facilitating, more learning, more creativity, more public speaking, more confidence. So for me, I have a mentality to, oh, it's for myself. I'm the one growing. I'm doing this for myself. Yes, you're doing so. The whole time of researching, of analyzing, I am stretching my brain. I am building my mental capacity. I hope you're still here with me. Hello? Hello? Okay, thank you. Now, another thing to also look out for is being arrogant, which is not far from being egocentric. Having a stubborn nature or fear to try out new things and laziness. These are things that can, act as barrier to critical thinking if we do not watch it. So now moving on to the next stage, we're going to be, doing, we're going to be trying out practical scenarios, of what critical thinking is. So we're going to go through the process together, case studies. Okay, so let me look at the question and answer.
Is that fine, Victoria? Do you have the 16 questions? Victoria, are you on the 16 questions now? So you are on the 16 questions. The first one is from Afaf, saying what's the difference between the critical thinking and analytical thinking? Is that it? You're there?
Okay. Okay, the last one I'm seeing here is difference between hearing and listening.
Exactly, yeah, that's
critical thinking is something teachable, or the person learn it by critical thinking. Okay, let me start with the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is not active listening. Hearing is, oh, somebody is making a statement. Okay, she said, okay, what's the person's name here? Okay, her name is Hoda. Okay, Hoda said she's going to drop by at the house tomorrow and we'll work on, whatever project. This is an example together. Okay, yes, I'll be expecting her. That's what you say. But listening means you do not just hear what the person has said. Okay, Hoda is going to drop by at the house tomorrow. What are we working on? Okay, working on this project. What do I need to do to prepare for her coming? What do I need to get ready so that we're working on whatever project I am more helpful? So listening is being actively involved, listening to the person's body language, trying to understand the information the person is passing to you, even if the person is not actually saying everything. I'm one person that is very good at body language, and it really helps me a lot, even in my workplace. So a team member could be saying something to me, but I'm saying something else. So what I try to do is, if it's something I could sort out, I do that. And you see that after a while they'll be like, oh, Victoria, how did you know? I said I figured out, from the reasons, the things you gave, I figured out. So that's active listening. Critical thinking is teachable, and the person will learn it with practicing. Practice with little things, with little decisions you make every day. With the whole processes I've mentioned, there's a case study here, so work on it together. So I will advise you also listen so that you can actually get other knowledge about it. How to use critical thinking effectively when making quick decisions. Are there any steps in the process that we can possibly compromise on? They are the processes that I've listed. We'll be doing a case study together and walk through it together. The 5 stages are: 1, identifying, which is defining whatever it is you want to analyze in critical thinking. Do you want to solve a problem? Do you want to verify an information that was given to you? That's the defining stage. The second one is analyzing. It's not you analyzing whatever thing you want to define, trying to get other information that people have, mentioned about it, asking questions, just trying to, be sure that you're clear. It's more like you're developing the problem that you've defined, that will lead you to possible solutions. What have other people said? What are the assumptions? Are there any evidence that was presented? Then the third one is reflecting. Reflecting is a combination of all what you've identified, what you've analyzed, and your own assumptions. It's you questioning yourself and aligning it with all the information that you've gotten. Now, evaluation is you evaluating the whole process from identifying, analyzing, reflecting, to be sure that everything you've done from the beginning is correct. And reasoning is the last stage, which is you making a decision or making a conclusion or a probable solution from everything that you've analyzed. I hope I took that correctly. Can we say that, what's the next one? Yes, when we can use critical thinking, can we risk decisions without using critical thinking? I'm sure you're trying to say, can we make decisions without critical thinking? We often make decisions every day. When I started, lots of us do not even go through the process of critical thinking, but we actually deliberately go through the process of critical thinking. We'll see that we may probably not have made the decision we made, or would have made more better defined and quality decision, that if any other person, has to go through the same process, the person will be proud of what we've done. And then the consequences of whatever decision we've made, we can be proud of it. So critical thinking should be something that should be part of your life. You can start with little decisions that you make every day and apply the processes all through. Now, how can we train our mind into being critical thinking? I mentioned the traits of the critical thinker. You have to be very curious. You have to be objective. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be an active learner. You have to have empathy. You have to have that curious mind to learn. You have to be open to new knowledge. These are some of the examples. So it's something that you can learn, but it takes time. But if you practice it, if you constantly practice it, you get better at it. Hello? Are you there? Are you getting my answers?
Yes.
Am I supposed to type the answers? No.
No, that's totally fine. No, we are answering the questions directly. Afterwards, that will be nice if you can share maybe your email. So if anyone needs further clarification or has more questions, maybe they can reach out to you directly, Victoria.
All right, that's fine. Amazing. Okay, we all know that we can network ideas and get active and inspired when we work in teams. So why the group thinking is a barrier? Exactly. That's why I said working in a group is good, but critical thinking is a process. If you're sharing ideas with a team, you're working together on a particular program, on a solution that has been decided on, that's fine. In as much as group thinking, it has its prospects for team thinking, it also has its consequences for critical thinking, because you're having a group of people that have different biases. You're having a group of people that may not be comfortable around some other persons. Do you understand? That's why I advise that, yeah, you could still do a team critical thinking, but if I am ahead of a team, what I will do is let everybody go and do their assignment, submit to a central body. At least everybody can easily express themselves, then you can take it up from there. That's something you can do with. You can't totally eradicate group thinking, but what I'm saying is if you throw out a particular assignment to a group, without, critical monitoring or following up, a lot of people may rely on others to provide answers. A lot of people may not do anything. A lot of people may not be free to express themselves. Another question here is, could you please suggest us books, exercises that can let us be more familiar with critical thinking? I have some references here. I could also make reference, through my emails after now. Then I have exercises here that we'll do together before I end the class. How can we contribute in a... Yeah, hello?
Do you hear me? Sorry to interrupt. There is Hanan will take the lead for the Q&A. So Hanan now will be interacting with you, just to not not to get you confused. You shall continue. Afterwards, we're gonna launch the session where we're gonna network. So participants will be moved to panelists. They will get to activate their cameras if they want, and also their mic. I don't know if you're gonna still be there, but they're gonna discuss what they've learned from you today. So this is I'm just updating you about the rest of the session. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's fine. So can I quickly go to the case studies that I've prepared?
Sure. Yeah, sorry for interrupting you.
All right. So I guess we're still listening. So for those that have been asking me, how do I develop critical thinking, process it, and all? Now, in critical thinking, like I said, the most important thing is to be sure that the evidence, your opinion that you have can be verified. I cannot tell you what you've told me, your claim is wrong. I cannot tell you mine is right. The most important thing is what's my reason? What's the premise for the claim? And an argument makes sense when your premise, the reason, and the claim is something that is verifiable. I'll give you a typical example. In argument, you have deductive argument and you have inductive argument. Now, for example, I can say acid is very bad. Acid is very harmful to the skin. Or I can say grapes are not good for dogs. So if I have a dog and you're my friend and I tell you grapes are not good for dogs, which is confirmed, automatically it means that grapes are not good for all dogs. So when you're arguing, the first one, which is deductive, is it starts from a general knowledge of a thing to a specific. But the specific knowledge or principle is something that a lot of people or everybody can relate with as being correct. Now, another aspect of argument is the inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is starting from a specific and believing that a specific knowledge should be accepted by everybody. Now, a typical example is Victoria comes to go visit McDonald's every day by 8 a.m. Victoria visits McDonald's every day by 8 p.m. to get chicken fries or something, and then you just make a claim, oh, Victoria visits McDonald's by 8 p.m. every day. So if she visits McDonald's by 8 p.m. every day, it means that Victoria will come to McDonald's today by 8 p.m. So we should expect her. But this is not an argument with a strong claim, because there's a probability. What if something happens? What if my mom falls ill? What if my brother falls ill? What if my dad falls ill, or anybody falls ill and I'm supposed to help them to the hospital or take care of them? It means I won't come to McDonald's on that day. That's inductive reasoning. Now, deductive reasoning. If you don't wear your face mask during the COVID-19, there's a possibility that when you go out during the lockdown, that's if you have to go out for compulsory stuff like food stuff, get grocery, there's a possibility that you catch COVID. You can't say this is probable because a lot of people caught COVID, by hanging out through the cold weathers, going to places, not washing their hands, they caught COVID. So you can't say the same thing with Victoria would come to McDonald's to buy chicken fries by 8 p.m. It's probably that I come there by 8 p.m. every day, doesn't mean that I must come there. But COVID-19 has been proven that people are dying, people are being infected with COVID-19. So if I don't cover my face mask and practice, simple hygiene practices at home, wash my hands, constantly, and don't shake or touch surfaces anyhow, there's a high possibility that I will get COVID. So this is deductive. So the possibility that I will get COVID or I will get COVID is specific. Then the reason that I will get COVID is because I don't stay in my house and I don't wear face masks and I don't wash my hands. So now moving on, case studies. I believe we have college students here. I want to believe we'll have some of us that are possibly interns or that are volunteering in different organizations. Please, if you're not volunteering or you've never ever volunteered, I would advise you to please do volunteer. It's for your own good. A major part of my life that has built me into what I am today, my capacity is volunteering. Without expectations, I just volunteer and I learn. And funny enough, even when I was volunteering, my volunteering years, not like I had anything, I just loved, reaching out. And I just realized that for every time I do it, there's a better me that has improved. So please, I would advise you to volunteer. If you've never volunteered for, please make it part of you and volunteer. Find organizations where you can volunteer. It's good for you. It's good for you to build, skills that will help you in the 21st century. Okay, now, so moving on. Assuming you're a high school teacher asked to take on a new class, in your school, in your community with students whom have had a record of past failures in the academic work related to poor literacy and numeracy levels. And you're expected to deploy critical thinking. You're to deploy the best effective teaching strategies.
Sorry, Victoria, to interrupt. So maybe we can go to the, we can leave the case studies to the networking part. Asma, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe that can be a good idea, Victoria, so you can get the interaction of the participants. What do you think?
Okay, but we can at least do one of the case studies there because it will help them. I want them to be involved. We can interact there. I want them to be involved so they can get it.
Amazing. So Hanan will start moving them as panelists, so they maybe can take the mic and discuss the case studies with you, because as I said, we were planning to give them the floor by the end of the workshop. So maybe that's a good opportunity so that you can discuss and interact during the case studies with you. Is that fine with you?
All right, it's fine. It's fine.
Amazing.
For the participants who wants to interact, you can raise your hand and then we move you to panelists. Thank you so much. Okay, back to you, Victoria. You have with us, you have us with you, and you have the participants as well.
Okay. Okay, so can we go ahead? Hanani, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I thought I would be seeing their faces.
Yeah, you are able to see Huriya's face if she turns on the camera. Yeah, here she is.